Al Jazeera Podcasts.
There's a new candidate to the race for Wisconsin's 8th congressional district.
When politicians started interfering in our personal health care decisions, that was the ticket for me to start interfering in political decisions.
That's Dr. Kristin Lyerly, an OBGYN specialising in reproductive health. She's also running for a seat in the US House of Representatives in the November 5th elections. Part of her work used to be providing abortion services in Wisconsin, but not since 2022, when the conservative-led Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, basically the federal right to abortion access. This reactivated a Wisconsin 19th century law that banned all abortions, including in cases of rape or incest. Now, Dr. Kristin is running for a seat at the table where decisions about who controls reproductive rights or freedoms are being made. So, I want to know, why have women's bodies become so politicized in the United States? I'm Samantha Johnson, and this is Now You Know, a new series from Al Jazeera dedicated to amplifying women's voices, stories, and topics we're all thinking and talking about. This is a safe space where we go all in, so by the end of each episode, you can say, now I know. 2 weeks after Roe v. Wade was overturned, Wisconsin's Democratic Attorney General Josh Hall filed a lawsuit to challenge the ban's validity. Dr. Kristin was the plaintiff, and they won, bringing abortion care back to Wisconsin. Fast forward to today, and Dr. Kristin wants to make history by becoming one of the first pro-abortion rights OBGYNs on Capitol Hill. She may have her work cut out for her. Dr. Kristin Lyerly, thank you so much for joining us on Now You Know. I have to say, you've been a very, very busy woman. I mean, you're still a practicing OBGYN, and now you're in politics. So what made you want to get into this field?
Well, this field is all up in my practice. So there was really no choice at this point. I've been doing advocacy work since I started medicine. But after the Dobbs decision, when we lost our ability to provide abortion care, which is health care, we lost our ability to take care of our patients.
And this is the decision many were waiting for, a ruling in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. This, the major case regarding abortion rights in this country.
So this is, in fact, a landmark ruling here. This is overturning nearly 50 years of precedent that was first established in Roe v. Wade.
And our patients were stunned. They were afraid. They didn't know where to go to seek help. We didn't know what we could do to provide care for them. So that was clearly the time when I needed to take it to a different level. And yeah, I'm running for U.S. Congress in the district where I was born and raised.
If you get into the House of Representatives, you'll be the first pro-choice OBGYN. Is that correct?
I will. I'll be the first pro-choice OBGYN in Congress. You know, Roe was over 50 years ago. And since then, they've been picking away at our rights. And even on the state level here in Wisconsin, since I started medical school, we've been on the defense constantly as we've seen our rights be chipped away at. There hasn't been someone there who's been able to explain and describe what's really happening in real life terms.
And speaking of what's going on the ground at the moment, when you're campaigning, what are people telling you?
They are telling me that they support what we're doing. You know, I have to be honest, I ran for state assembly in 2020 before the Dobbs decision, before the fall of Roe. I was very quiet about abortion care. We didn't talk about it at all. And in fact, I was concerned. Well, I live in a very Catholic district, and abortion is not something that is okay in the Catholic faith. Even contraception is forbidden. So to be running for a public office here and to be so out in my practice about those things is dangerous. After the fall of Roe, this is something I'm talking about all the time in every space, whether it's here in my district or across the country. People want to share their stories now. They understand that we have to share our stories, and they understand that, again, this is healthcare. This is something that if we don't talk about it, we're going to continue to lose access. And that means that people are going to die. families will be torn apart, and communities will continue to be devastated.
Now, I know you're running as a Democrat, but obviously on the other side, the Republicans have a strong opinion on abortion and reproductive rights as well.
I'm proudly pro-life, and I have no apology for being pro-life, and there's no bad time to defend the unborn.
The Plan B pill kills a baby in the womb once a woman is already pregnant.
Georgia Republicans are advancing a bill that would ban the delivery of abortion pills by mail. The bill would also require a woman to be examined by a physician before the pills are given out.
Would you say that there is a growing gap between the two parties when it comes to this topic?
Absolutely. If you are a Democrat, you support women's access to reproductive health care. And if you are a Republican, you don't. It's truly that clear. There is a threat to accessing birth control pills and fertility treatment. We know that there are laws on the books from the 19th century that will prevent us from being able to access birth control. And most importantly, we've seen on multiple occasions Republicans in the legislature now who have said no to IVF.
At the U.S. Capitol, Senate Republicans have once again blocked a Democratic-backed bill that would guarantee access to in vitro fertilization across the country.
The resolution followed a nationwide debate earlier this year after an Alabama Supreme Court ruling said frozen embryos should be considered as human life.
They voted against families and the ability for people to treat infertility so that they can start their families. So I think it's incredibly clear where the Republicans stand on not just abortion care, but the full scope of reproductive health care for women.
How big of an issue is this in this year's elections?
It is, for many people, the only issue. I hear that from people every single day. Oh, yes, young women in particular. They know that not only is abortion inaccessible for many people in this country, for a third of the women in this country, but contraception is on the line.
As part of the High Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, Justice Thomas called on his colleagues to reconsider their past ruling guaranteeing contraception access, underscoring the fragility of all reproductive rights.
The ability to access birth control, whether you're using it for birth control or for heavy, painful periods or for any other reason.
Senate Republicans voted to block a bill put forward by Democrats that would guarantee access to contraception nationwide.
The Right to Contraception Act would safeguard access to birth control nationwide, but failed today to meet the 60 votes needed to pass in the Senate. Just 2 Republicans voted for it, many dismissing the effort led by Democrats as a stunt, as contraception remains legal across the country.
So for many young people who are planning their families and planning their futures, this is the number one issue for women and men. And even if it's not their top issue, they understand how it fits into other issues that are top of mind, like the economy. Your ability to control your own reproductive health, the path of your own life, affects your ability to get the job that you want, the education that you need, where you live. All of those things are tied up into the freedom to make your own personal healthcare decisions. So yeah, people understand and they know it's not just an isolated issue.
Now, Donald Trump has frequently claimed credit for overturning Roe v. Wade.
Well, I did something that nobody thought was possible. I got rid of Roe v. Wade. I got it done and nobody thought it was even a possibility.
How did you feel when you heard that Roe v. Wade was overturned?
It changed my life completely. We stopped all abortion care when we found out about the judgment. At the moment we found out about it, we had to send patients who were sitting in the waiting room home because we didn't feel that it was safe for us to provide care. And then we had to put our heads together and say, okay, how do we advise our colleagues across the state to deal with such difficult situations as miscarriages and complicated pregnancies, things like ectopic pregnancies, pregnancies that implanted in places other than the uterus that would not survive and would kill the mother if they continued to grow, yet they were still pregnancies. So there were so many decisions that had to be made, so much communication that had to happen, not just in Wisconsin, but across the country.
Access to abortion has been enshrined in U.S. law for 52 years. Look, did you see this coming?
We have seen this coming over the last more than a decade. Our state legislature has been chipping away at access to care bit by bit. When I was providing medication abortion care, we have a current law that requires people to wait 24 hours in between the time that they are counseled and the time that they can actually receive the care. We have a law that requires a physician to deliver the care, both the initial counseling visit and the subsequent care. And it needs to be the same physician. So think about all of those barriers for people who are traveling 3 or more hours to get this care, the expense, the time away from work, the additional childcare. It has been nearly impossible for people to access this kind of care. I remember very well sitting in a room with a patient and her partner as they were discussing what they were going to be able to sell so that they could come back and get that and do that second visit. And we saw similar things happening across the country. In so many states, people are struggling to get basic access to basic health care.
No one should be struggling to get basic health care. It's kind of hard to believe that in 2024, women in particular are still struggling to have rights over their own bodies. When we are talking about abortion rights, how does it look at the moment nationwide?
Not good. 1 in 3 states in the United States has an abortion ban that prevents people from getting access to abortion care. So in places like Idaho, in Arkansas, women are just not getting the care that they need. And that's resulting in women dying, babies dying. In states where we have abortion bans, women are more than 3 times more likely to die as a result of their pregnancy. And babies, infants, are more likely to die. So clearly, these abortion bans are not saving moms. They're not saving babies.
Wisconsin is one of the few states to challenge and actually win the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Can you just tell me what's going on there?
Yes. When Roe fell, Wisconsin had a law on the books from 1849 that criminalized access to abortion care. And the only exception was the life of the mother. At the time, and for over a year, that made it very difficult for us to take care of our patients and even for our patients to seek care. They were worried that they were going to go to jail just for asking a question. That's the chilling effect of a law like this. Well, we were fortunate here in Wisconsin to have an incredibly strong attorney general who I joined with, along with a number of other colleagues and physicians, to fight back against this law. And I'm really proud to say that my name is on the judgment that brought abortion back to Wisconsin in Dane County Circuit Court. That judgment has been appealed and has been taken up by the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
The courts also expect to weigh in on Wisconsin's zombie abortion ban that makes it a felony to perform an abortion, except to save the life of the mother.
But in the meantime, we've restored abortion access in clinics in the southern part of the state. But the vast majority of the state still lacks access to abortion care. And this tends to be the most tender, sensitive type of care that people need. These are often those pregnancies that are deeply wanted, and they're diagnosed as flawed in one way or another. Usually around 20 weeks, we do a standard ultrasound. There are so many things that can go wrong in a pregnancy, and that puts families in very difficult situations where here they have a desired pregnancy that won't survive. So where do they go from here? Who do they turn to? What are their options? Many of these hospitals are not providing this care. So these families, these grieving families, are forced to leave the state to get the care they need. They're forced to incur additional expenses, childcare, time away from work. Sometimes their insurance doesn't cover this care, so it's out of pocket. It's additional burdens that these grieving, heartbroken families don't deserve. But that is what the American healthcare system and politics in this country is doing to families right now.
How dangerous is it actually for a patient to travel to different states?
Well, it really depends on their circumstances. So if you have a normal pregnancy and you are healthy, then it's not dangerous, but you need support. And that is so personal and individualized. And that's a normal, healthy situation. If you are someone who's suffering from an ectopic pregnancy, you're bleeding as a result of a miscarriage, you have preeclampsia or some other condition that's putting your life in danger, these are clearly life-threatening situations. We've heard stories out of Texas where people have been told to just get in their car and drive to New Mexico with an ectopic pregnancy. As a physician, that scares the hell out of me. What happens if that ectopic pregnancy bursts? It could burst at any time, and that woman could bleed to death as she's trying to get to healthcare 6 hours away. Or in Idaho, we've seen a number of cases where they've had to medevac patients out of these hospitals to get care in neighboring states because in Idaho, they can't provide emergency abortion care. That's not healthcare. That's not anything but fear and terror and intimidation. And it doesn't just affect that one person, it affects the medical community. Medical providers don't want to practice in an environment where they know that they can't provide the care that they need to provide for their patients when they feel like they are in danger of being criminally charged, losing the ability to practice medicine for taking care of their patients.
I can't imagine being in a situation like that and having to drive, like you said, 6 hours.
I mean, that's part of it. I mean, here's a personal story from a friend in the western part of Wisconsin. She had a desired pregnancy that was flawed, and she was heartbroken. What she wanted to do was deliver her baby in her hometown, surrounded by her friends and her faith leader and the people she knew cared about her. But instead, she had to travel to Minnesota. It wasn't that far, and her life wasn't in danger. But she didn't get that compassionate care that she needed, and she didn't get the procedure that she wanted. And she is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder because of the experience that she had to endure, because all she wanted to do is hold Oliver until he died. How do we treat women and families like this? How do we as leaders in this country think that this is okay? It's not okay. It's not okay.
Oh. I just want to bring up something that the Vice President and the Democrat presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, said, and she's made reproductive freedom a key pillar of her platform.
When Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom, I will proudly sign it into law as President of the United States.
Dr. Kristen, why is abortion such a big ticket in this year's elections?
Why is abortion a political issue in this country? We don't legislate any other healthcare the way we legislate abortion. We don't tell people that you've hit this point in your cancer care and now you no longer get to have chemotherapy. We don't say your heart failure is at this point because you didn't take care of yourself earlier in your life because you smoked and your weight is more than it should be, so you don't get heart failure medication. Why are we legislating women's health issues? It doesn't make any sense. The people have been pushed too far, and they know that this is about personal freedom. This is about the ability to make the decisions that affect the trajectory of our lives.
Dr. Kristin Lyerly, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on Now You Know. I really appreciate you and appreciate you giving your time.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
So now you know, when it comes to women's bodies and our reproductive freedom, why it's become so highly politicized in the United States. A huge thank you to Dr. Kristin Lyerly for joining me today. And of course, a special thank you to you for watching and listening to Now You Know.